Morning, everybody. Natalie coming to live. Spirit and coffee. Got my coffee here. Yum, yum, yum. It is nice and warm and cozy. Tell you, 2020 couldn't end soon enough. I don't think that anybody escapes this year from, going through some sort of battle and maybe somewhere in the world there are people who are like, haha, you guys did it wrong and look at us, we're wonderful, you crazy people. But I almost feel like everybody on the planet is going through something, because when we talk about the cosmos and we talk about what we see sort of surfacing all over, there's this something called the dark night of the soul. And some people know about it, some people don't know about it. I've known about it for probably 8 years now. Maybe, yeah, about 8 years. And that's because I've been through the dark night of the soul. And the reality is that I believe that we continue to go through the dark night of the soul. I don't know that it's something that stops, but I think there's probably really big times in our life where we're going through the dark night of the soul. Now, here's what's happening cosmically. And I kind of like it because I read in a book, it's like the cosmos, the very foundation of the universe is going through the dark night of the soul, meaning that darkness and the shadows are being revealed. Okay. And it's funny because I read a post this morning about how dark forces can't stop what God has ordained, right? And stuff. And so I said, interesting. The old paradigm and the old way of thinking, what does that mean? And I think in the old way of thinking and in the old way of understanding that message would be ordained through another human being. And I like that it says God ordains, right? But here's the deal. God has given us the light. We also have choice. And we can choose to live and lurk in the darkness if we choose to. We can stay in the darkness if we choose to. Well, God has ordained what is light. That doesn't necessarily mean that we choose the light. It doesn't mean that automatically the light is given to us. We ourselves have to go through the darkness to get to the light. That takes discernment. It takes the understanding that we need eyes to see in the dark. And we must then stand up for what is righteous, what is good. You can or cannot. I mean, it's totally up to you. But as we walk through the darkness, right, it's kind of like this. It's like you go into a dark room and you're in this dark room and then you can't see, right? It's like you can't see. It's like everything's super dark and you can't see. And it's like, I can't see in the dark. And then all of a sudden you're able to see in the dark. Your vision starts to open up. And before you know it, you're able to see. And you're like, wow, now I can see in the darkness. Okay. Some people don't ever get to see the light in the darkness. Some people stay in the darkness, but it's by choice. And that's the beauty of it, is that we have the choice to allow ourselves to walk towards the light and see. But we must discern what are the dark forces pulling us into the darkness over and over and over and over again. And here's the deal. Not right, wrong, good, or bad. It is just the bane of our suffering, right? It's like if you continue to allow dark forces to bring you into the darkness and you stay there, your suffering is going to be higher. It's not a right, wrong, good, or bad thing. It has nothing to do with that. It's neutral. It's just that the individual that's in the darkness is experiencing suffering. If you're experiencing suffering in your life, it's probably because you're in the dark. Now, again, not right, wrong, good, or bad, but a consequence happens when we play there too long. There's consequences for it. And the way to understand this is to look at your life. What are the circumstances and conditions that are actually being illuminated in your life? Well, being in the darkness, you're going to cast the light out into the material world. The material world, looking at your relationships, the people that you're connected to. How are the relationships with the people you love? Are they healthy? Are they good? Are they not? And if they're not good, you get to look at your life and ask yourself why. That's called taking personal responsibility for what's showing up. Well, why is it showing up this way? Discernment is having the ability to question yourself through that process and take full responsibility for what shows up in your life. Now, if you're okay with what's showing up in your life and everything's harmonizing in your eyes, then that's fine. Continue doing what you're doing, right? But if not, then it's like, let me take a look and see why in the world is this showing up over and over and over again? Why am I suffering? What am I not seeing? Or what am I pretending not to see? And it could be both. Sometimes we hope that we can cast the light in these shadow places, but it's not up to us to decide. Only people who want to come to the light will choose that. We can't force people into the light. That's not how this works. And right now we're in Plato's cave, looking at the walls and the shadows passing by and not understanding how to get out of it, right? Like what's in the light? We can't even see it. We can't even understand it at this point. Some of us completely in the dark. Why? Because we're not 100% sure what's happening, right? There's so much going on right now, and we may never come to that understanding of, what's happening in the cosmos and everything to bring us to this particular point of time. There's theories, there's ideas about why we're experiencing what we're experiencing and seeing what we see in the world today. We know that we are participating. Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Rajel. I don't know what that is. Israel. Good morning, Lisa Marie. Or Liz Marie. Right. So we ourselves don't 100% know. We can't say that we understand completely fully. We have science, we have tools to try to describe and theorize why we are seeing it, but we do know that we are participatory, that we are participating in the events that we are seeing happening around us. And I will say that the dark night of the soul as a cosmic thing, right? If we put it into that perspective and we started to understand it from that space, we can then say that perhaps we are going through our own spiritual dark night of the soul. And what does that look like? But we do as the hermit does, right? And I love the idea of the hermit, which the hermit says, there's always the light. The lantern is always with you to guide you. We also have what? We have the cats, right? Cats were revered a long time ago. Why? But it was because they could see in the dark. They were the eyes to the underworld. Does it mean that we have to go and praise cats? No, it's not about paganism. It's about us being able to see for ourselves in the darkness, for us to be able to recognize when there are dark forces pulling us towards the darkness. Is it wrong to go through the darkness? No, we must go through the darkness in order to get to the light. So it's a both and. This is not an either or conversation. This is not, oh, you're terrible for being in the darkness. No. There are some really amazing things that we pull out of the darkness, some very deep understandings, right? Good morning, Aubrey. And everybody is starting to talk about the darkness and emotional states of being. Why? Because it's a time right now where people are like, it's not working. Whatever we're doing as a world is not working. The old ways of thinking don't work. They don't fit into what we see in the world around us. There's sort of this disconnect between the words that are being spoken and the view that we're seeing. In other words, there's no reconciliation between the two. All we're seeing is distortion because we're like, wait, what? This doesn't fit into the theories and the models and the understanding of the way the world's supposed to be looking at this time. Like models have changed. Ideas have changed. The way that we see the stars, everything has changed. And historically, over time, And we're starting to say, well, what are we really seeing? If we're seeing destruction of the planet, if we're seeing that we're like, oh, well, humans are dumping waste, this, that, the other, well, that's part of the story. That's part of it. What other forces are at play? There's tons of forces at play. And us, right, we have the ability, and this is kind of cool. This is what makes it cool to be a human being. Is that we ourselves can experience all of these things, and we can sort of put words to it to describe it. So we're basically just reviewing and viewing and observing and witnessing and experiencing all these things around us. And then we're trying to put words to them, but we look at the words and the models and everything that has been put and theorized out there, and we're saying, yeah, but that's not how we see it. So those theories don't work. They just fall apart. Because now individuals are saying, yeah, but that model doesn't even make sense because I can't even see the world that way. And we're in a great shift. It's a paradigm shift. It's a paradigms of consciousness is one of the courses I'm taking. And it's funny because it's like, well, what is postmodernism? What is postmodernism? So the world around us right now was before or prior was very, very, very scientific, very left brain. And this is in the Western world, I'll say, mostly. Right, because we still have sort of the Eastern world, which then goes into different ideologies when it comes to religions, when it comes to practices, when it comes to the family unit, culture, and all that kind of stuff. When we're looking at the Western world, very individualistic. It's very scientific. And science itself doesn't even explain what we see and what we're experiencing, and there's a total disconnect because people will say in the sciences, well, look, I believe this to be true only if I have, evidence of it. Okay, cool. Got it. How do you feel about that? And then they're like, what do you mean feel? I don't feel. Yes, you do. You're human. You're having an experience. Your body feels. If you didn't feel, you wouldn't be able to eat, or you wouldn't even care about eating. You'd have no taste buds. So you're feeling something. You're seeing with your eyes, and then you have some feeling in the brain because you're processing the information that's coming in. That's not scientific. There are thoughts in your head that nobody can hear. How do you explain that scientifically? And they try to, but they really can't. They can't put their finger on it. And there's this total disconnect, right? Science isn't absolute, but people will say, well, it is absolute. Really? So let's talk about your experiences of this world and take science out. Is that true for you? Is it real that if I put a hot pan on your hand that it's going to burn and you're going to say, ouch? Well, probably 9 times out of 10, if your brain isn't functioning properly and you have no pain because the brain is what monitors the pain, maybe not. But in reality, I'm going to say, is that true or not true? I mean, you could explain it scientifically, but there's a feeling that happens. You're not going to keep your hand there. You're going to move it. So the emotional states that we go through, right? It's looking at life through these emotional lenses. Emotion ignites the darkness in some ways. Emotion allows us to walk through the darkness in some ways. The darkness is not just about our physical body going into dark spaces. It's about our emotional states and us going through these emotional dark spaces that are uncomfortable. When they speak of dark forces, it's the forces that are pulling you into suffering. Okay, so what is that? What is suffering, right? Well, how do you stay into an emotional state? It's asking yourself, what patterns have I repeated? What patterns am I repeating? Your projectiles will show up to help you kind of discern what is light and what is dark. And some people just don't get the message. They just don't get the message. They can have an entire nation telling them this person's bad. Look at Hitler, right? How did someone like Hitler come to power? And for a while, some people might have thought he was wonderful. He was the best thing on the, best thing since peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And then what happened? Well, we know what happened with Hitler, right? He went and executed all kinds of people, genocide. He wanted to kill all the Jews. I mean, he did some crazy stuff, right? And then he was doing even more crazy. I don't know what he was trying to do. I don't know if he was just trying to like be the dictator of the entire Earth, planet, whatever, and kill everybody except for him and his little tribe of people that wanted to follow him. Where was the discernment in the individuals to say this is dark force? Well, most people didn't even speak up. They just allowed themselves to go through it and said, "Oh, okay, well, we'll just follow it. We're afraid. We're afraid to speak up. We're not going to say anything." And look where that led them, right? So, right, wrong, good, or bad? No, not from that perspective. What we're looking at is, why did people allow themselves to stay in the darkness and not speak up? And that's you yourself asking yourself those questions. Well, do I choose to stay there? I'm sure there's projectiles and people saying, red, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Stay out. And you can get a million, trillion, gazillion warnings. And guess what? You still walk right into it. So why don't we listen to our people? The people that care about us the most, the ones that are always going to be there, the ones that are always going to pull us up when we're down, the ones who are going to accept us no matter what, the ones who are going to make sure that we take our medicines and make sure that we're okay, and that give all that we can to make sure that that person's provided for. And not listen, right? And we'll say, well, we're not going to listen to that person that we know is good in their heart and stands on good moral principles and grounding. And we won't listen. We won't listen to them. Why? Because we have to go through our own dark night of the soul. We have to be the ones going through it. Why? Because at the end of the day, we have to experience it in order to recognize what's available on the other side of that. And that's through experience. You can't. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that, yes, we go through these dark spaces, and yes, we're going to have people say, don't go, don't go. What are you doing? Just stay out of there. Don't go that direction. And they're going to go anyway. And you're going to be like, what the world are you doing? Why would this person choose to do this? What? And everybody's scratching their heads. Everybody can see the warning signs. Everybody's even telling you, like, if you drive your car on that bridge going a million miles an hour, you're going to fall off because there's construction there and the bridge is not finished. And you still see people drive a million miles an hour down the bridge and go right off the edge. And you're going, I warned you. I don't know why you didn't believe me or trust me or why you weren't listening to me, but they do it anyway, right? So we do it because we love the person. We do it because we don't want the person to be harmed. But the reality is sometimes you've got to just open up your arms and say, go for it. By all means, have fun. Now, on the other end of it, right, is not the I told you so. And you could be this person or whatever, but it's accepting people with open arms and saying, all right, okay, now do you get it now? Hopefully you get it now. Are you going to repeat it again and again and again and again? And then eventually you say, well, I can't be a part of this. But we go through the dark night of the soul. We have to go through the dark night of the soul, because when we do, we start to recognize our own patterns that are keeping us and holding us back. And it seems scary sometimes. It's not easy to be in those emotional states, right? Where it feels like everything's caving on you, or you're depressed, or there's anxiety, or there's overwhelm, and you're experiencing all this trauma coming up, and you're crying, and you're like, what is going on? Really, those are the opportunities to say, okay, how am I creating this in my life? And how do I maneuver through it? Not to act like it doesn't exist, but how do I go through it? Right? And then there's those people that are like, I don't want to go through it. I'm going to run away from it. No, you can't. You can try. You could try to run away from it, but guess what? It's going to come smack you right back in the face again until you're able to go through it completely. Some people, I think maybe some people, they may die not ever, and maybe that's where the idea of reincarnation came in. Is like, you see these people battle, go to the same patterns over and over and over again, not even recognizing it's a pattern, right? It's the awareness that it is a pattern, the recognition, because that's the first part of healing, is saying, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing all over again. What am I doing? Wait, what? I'm doing this all over again. How do I maneuver through that pattern, and how do I get to the other side of that? And sometimes it's having a real conversation with yourself. You got to get real with yourself. That's not easy to get real. It's called real talk. It's called tough love for self. And sometimes we need to have that real tough love where it's like, okay, how did I create this? How am I responsible for the results I'm seeing in my life? It's that full responsibility for what we see in our life. And sometimes it's so hard. It's such a hard pill to swallow. Like, oh my God, I created this. I created this. And the recognition of it, though, but that helps us to get to the other side. It helps us maneuver through the shadows. It helps us move through the shadow side. It's not about letting it go. And you're going to hear more and more people talking to this idea, because why? Because we're in a new paradigm where we can no longer say that emotion doesn't matter and that these shadow emotions are non-existent and we can just get rid of them completely. That's BS. We know that doesn't work. It's not true. If that was true, everybody would be walking around with smiles on their face, leaping for joy every single day of their life, never having drama, never having issues, never having suffering. But that's not what we see. So every religious sector that promises that you're never going to experience pain and heartache again, that's not true. Not here in this three-dimensional space. So what we're seeing is a shift in consciousness, or a shift in the paradigm, and the shift in the way that people engage the world. And they're saying, well, I feel sad. Why can't I talk about this? And it's opening up the opportunity for people to actually talk about what's truly inside, which is sometimes hurt and sadness and pain and suffering. And there's nothing wrong with you. That's part of the experience. And we've forgotten that there's beauty in going through it. And we avoid it, and we cause more suffering for ourselves. But if we simply allowed ourselves to go through the emotional states and allowed ourselves to fully engage it and surrender to it and live with it and understand that this too shall pass. I mean, that's where that came from. And recognize that after you go through this entire process of, allowing your emotions to move through you, that at the end of that, there is this beautiful rainbow just waiting for you. There's beauty in experiencing these dark emotions. There's beauty in it. It allows us to dance in the happiness and the joy, fully embody the happiness and the joy. Not as just like it's not sustainable. Not as like, oh, I'm happy for a day or two, and then of 5 months I'm depressed. Good morning, Adriana. But like the embodiment of going through the process and saying, I know that once I get through the process, I can have 5-6 months of joy. And then something else shows up and more suffering shows up. And it's a never-ending cycle in this three-dimensional time space. We cannot deny it anymore. That's where we're at. We're at a place where we no longer need to deny it. That we can be real with each other. People are like, Natalie, you're so authentic. I just admire that. I'm like, no, you have it in you too. I'm just going to put it out on the table right up front. I'm not going to lie. I go through all kinds of shit. I like this. It's just what I'm in. Yeah. We all are. It's the whole world is going through the dark night of the soul. But it's beautiful, and it can be beautiful if we allow ourselves to accept and understand that it's a tool. It's a tool, it's a process. It was built into us for some reason. Now, some of it was historically a biological thing for what, like the fight, flight, freeze, and the fear and all that stuff was built into us for survival. We don't, that is biological, and we've kind of allowed ourselves to allow those emotions to show up no matter, even though we're not like fighting off lions and tigers and bears to survive. Instead of, oh my, lions and tigers and bears to survive. We're not, but we still have that fear in us, right? And it's the psychological fear of other things, right? The fear has now morphed into something that we probably don't even need to be fearing or worried about, but biologically we were built that way. The other things like depression and all that stuff, good morning, Scott, really is a result of our mental space and the way that we engage life and the way that we understand and have been taught about what this world means. And they've taken out several rites of passage in several cultures, which was the ability to allow a child to go through these emotional states and allow the child to develop into a healthy state of mind and say, oh, it's okay to have these feelings. People cringe at the word feeling. And I just can't even understand, because guess what? About 90% of our time we feel. I mean, I'm feeling this cup of coffee right now. It's warm. It's giving me a sensation in my fingers. As I talk, I can feel the vibrational frequencies in my throat, and I can feel it. As I'm sitting here on the chair, I can feel my feet pushed up against the table. It's giving me some emotional response, right? Am I comfortable or am I uncomfortable? If I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to shift. Thank you, Nitin. Am I going to shift or am I not? So again, we're feeling all the time, and yet we're afraid of this word feeling and emotion. I mean, we've come too far as a species to be afraid to talk about these things, right? It's like, it's almost, in a way, it's almost comical for someone. It would be comical for someone to act like they have a perfect life. In my mind, I'm like, oh God, if you're pretending that is happening, because I think back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, people were acting like everything was great. Let's hide everything. Let's pretend everything's beautiful. Someone did that today, I'll be like, really? We are so past that. We are past this pretending that everything is fine. It's not. Shit's crazy. Let's just be honest with each other. I'll be like, my life is in a whirlwind right now. I'm going crazy. Does that mean that I don't have beautiful experiences? No. It just means it's part of the experience. If we allow ourselves to go through the dark night of the soul, if we allow ourselves to move through that space and we fully embody it, surrender to it, and allow ourselves to go through the entire process without trying to numb it out with something. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to get in trouble, because I know the way it is out there. I'm not saying stop your meds, whatever, do whatever is right for you. But what I'm saying is, if we allow ourselves to go through the entire process and we come out on the other end, we will realize that we were not broken to begin with. We were just merely told we were broken because we had dark emotions. We all do. The person giving you the drugs probably has issues at their house. They're probably fighting all the time. It's not perfect at their house either. So I look at everybody and I'm like, we all have base issues. And the base issues are what? Base issues are sadness, depression, abandonment, not worthy enough. I don't matter. Who am I? Where do I fit in the world? Everybody's asking themselves these questions. It's not just one person. And you could go anywhere in the world. Unless you go to a place where they accept these emotional states and they walk people through the process as children, then you're going to have a whole person who's like, oh yeah, I have suffering, but I'm okay with that. Like, I live in the slum, I'm happy. Like, they taught me to be happy with no matter what, that this is just, whatever the process was. And I've seen kids run around. I worked with kids in the slums of India and they were happy. We were making bracelets and I've never seen such big smiles and joy and wonder in their eyes, because it was beautiful to them. That was their life. They didn't feel like they needed to be saved from something. They allowed themselves to go through the emotional process. But also there was suffering there too. So again, we all suffer. There's no escaping it. There's merely accepting it, surrendering to it, and allowing yourself to go through it. And when you get to the other side, that's what's available to you is God's greatest miracle. You fully embody joy, happiness, peace, love. It's not this false love, this, sort of superficial love, or this, I need love from the outside world. It's a full acceptance of self, a full acceptance of you, of who you are. Why? Because now you've accepted yourself completely. I have suffering and I accept it. I have sadness and I accept that. But I also have joy and I accept that. And I also have self-love and I accept that. You are going to hear, and I know that this message is out there more and more, the acceptance of what we call the shadow side. We're moving through a shadow. And a lot of people who are not prepared for it or might be struggling because they want things to be perfect and they're not going to be. So that, kind of get that out of your head. Or don't. It's totally up to you. I'm just trying to merely provide support to let you know you're not alone, that we are all going through it together. That is the sacred bond of brothers and sisterhood, is that we have it together. And together we can move through it and support one another through the process. If someone's giving you a warning sign and you still go in, there is nothing wrong with you. You're just going to have to experience it fully. And then there's people who've gone through it fully, and then someone's giving them a warning sign and they go, yeah, I think I'll skip on that particular challenge. I'm good there. And then another one will arise. But it's all an opportunity to recognize those parts that need to heal. So right now, what is Natalie going through? I'm going through some deep healing and abandonment issues. And the abandonment obviously comes from childhood, because it's all rooted in the base of it, right? And I go back to my past to recognize and reconcile, not to stay there, but to understand how it's impacted relationships now. So going to the past is not a problem. It's when people stay in the past and don't come back from the past that become an issue and a challenge to them physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that stuff. So working through abandonment it's a challenge for me right now. Feeling like the not worthy, and like I'm not enough, right? And it comes from these deep rooted childhood memories. And then after those memories are reconciled and I understand how they're impacting me as an adult in my relationships with individuals, then I can reconcile the two. And I can start to shift and change. Doesn't mean abandonment's not going to come through over and over again. It just means that I'm aware of it as it surfaces. Okay? You don't get rid of stuff. Stuff doesn't just go away. It just changes, right? Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. These things don't just get destroyed and demolished and they're gone forever. The abandonment is always going to be there. So as it rises within me, I recognize the sensation and the feeling and say, that's abandonment. Okay, got it. How am I going to deal with this? Well, sometimes I cry. I'm going to cry it out, and I'm going to allow myself to go through all the emotional state of what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling not accepted and how I'm feeling unworthy and not enough and all this stuff. And I'm going to cry it out till the end, until I have no more tears, no more thoughts. And then all of a sudden there's this beautiful sun that gleams in, and I remember I'm worthy. I am enough. Why? Because God said so. I wouldn't be here if not. And I don't need the recognition from the external world to know that I can find it deep within myself. So the process of allowing yourself to go through that over and over and over and over and over again. And then when it comes to you again, right? When you start to feel it surface again, the time between, and this is, I've talked about this, the difference between a master and a beginner is practice. The process, right? The process shortens, because as abandonment starts to come up and you start to cry, you start to overcome it a little faster. And before you know it, maybe there's no tears. Maybe you're able to feel it in the gut, rise it to the surface, let it go and release it back into self-acceptance. And the breath itself is the one that facilitates that. Maybe no longer the tears, but now the breath is the facilitator of it. And you could just breathe it in. But you understand the feeling, and that's what people are avoiding, the feeling of feeling sad, the feeling of allowing themselves to cry. They're avoiding that feeling, and they hold it in and they get sick. Let it go. Like, just let it go. Go through it fully. Allow yourself to come out on the other end. And no one's saying to stay stuck in the past, but we pull from the information. Where did the story begin? Where did these abandonment issues start? Oh, they started when I was a child because of blah, 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 blah. Okay. But guess what? It's okay. Because I accept myself now. And then I think about all the things that I've done in life, all the accomplishments and everything like that. And there's this self-pride of like, I'm proud of myself. And it could be a bit of ego. And again, ego is not a bad thing. Ego helps us facilitate through the world. That's why we have one. But it's not ego in the sense of I'm better than, but a recognition that I'm good enough. Okay. Not that I'm better than, but a recognition that I'm good enough. There's a difference there. And an allowance to give permission to others to recognize that they themselves are good enough and that they matter. And that gives them permission to go through the process. So here we are, dark night of the soul in the cosmos. We have the ability to walk through the shadow and come to the light. But it's going to be up to us to facilitate that. It's going to be up to us to stand for it and help our brothers and sisters through the process, not make them wrong for feeling, but merely be the support for them. Because we're all going through it. Every person, hey Betty, is going to be faced with the challenges of the dark night of the soul. And the only way to overcome it is to go through it and to also be honest with yourself and release that energy. If you don't release that energy, if you don't rectify all of the things that you need to rectify, those deep, dark things in your head, the secrets, whatever that it is, if you're not allowing yourself to let it go and let it out and rectify the issue, you're going to hold it in and your suffering is going to continue. But you can untangle that. You can untangle it. So we've got to get real with ourselves. And when you get real with yourself and you get authentic with yourself and you completely are honest with what's going on and you're able to communicate, articulate, and let it go, surrender and let it go. That's where healing starts. And I think we all want to heal, right? Everybody wants to heal. I'm healing. I'm healing through some emotional stuff. I'm not independent of that. I don't, it's not like I just talk about it, but it's not like my life. I have beautiful life, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I don't have suffering. I do. I go through it all the time. Okay, so hopefully this helps. I hope that you guys got some good information out of it. Just remember that we're on this journey together, and together we can unite as brothers and sisters. Remember, forgiveness, gratitude, love. That's it. Forgiveness, gratitude is a secret sauce right there. That is my secret sauce. It sounds beautiful in words, and in practice, it's so messy. It's a messy practice, but it sounds pretty when you say it. So there you go. That's right. Forgiveness, gratitude. I call that my secret sauce because first we start with forgiveness. That would be self-forgiveness. Yes, rewatch it, Betty. It talks about dark emotions and the dark night of the soul. Forgiveness first. We forgive ourselves and forgive others, right? Who are we not to forgive? That's what I was talking to God the other day. I was like, who am I not to forgive? Like, you forgive me. Like, how could I not forgive that? Like, really, who am I? Okay, so there you go, forgiveness. And then after the forgiveness, I recognize this gratitude surfaces. It's like thankful. It's like, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for what that person did for me, even though we may not get along anymore, or this or that, but there was something that was left behind. There was always a gift left behind in every situation, even the darkest situations. There's always a gift. And that I feel is gratitude. Being able to thank a person that might have slapped you in the face a few times and forgive them. And then also your self-forgiveness, right? And being grateful for yourself. Maybe you're grateful that you cut that off. And then love. And then you go through the process of love. And that's sort of, if you go through that process, I'm pretty sure it's going to come out the same for you. It may not, but that's how it is for me. Forgiveness, gratitude, love, in that order. And it sounds beautiful, but it's not easy to practice. It becomes messy. You're like, do I really want to forgive this person? Oh! But that's my motto, so I have to. No, just kidding. Actually, I'm not. Sometimes it's very, very complicated. But we go through it anyway. Whew. This world, I tell you guys, I'm just giving you guys a big old hug. Just feel it. I hope you guys can feel it. Like, we all just need hugs at this time in our life. Like, big hugs of like, I see you, sister. I feel you, brother. I understand. We're going through some crazy shit. And you know what? It's okay, because all of us are. We're all going through crazy shit. But the hugs and the love and the recognition that we're all going through the crazy together, right? Yeah. Thank you. I love the hugs. I appreciate hugs. I love hugs. I'm a hugger. I'm a huggy. I hug people even through the pandemic. I didn't care if they were willing to, but some people were. So I was like, ooh, I don't know. Do I go in for the hug or not? Like, I'm a hugger. I'll receive it. So there you have it. I love you guys so much. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time for yourself. And thank you for really, really, really understanding that it is okay to go through the shadowy emotions, that you are not alone, and that I promise you, you will be given the eyes to see through the darkness. You will. Everybody has a pair of eyes to see in the darkness. And you will, if you allow yourself to go through it, be able to see in the shadows and be able to walk through it. So be the cat. Be the cat in the darkness, right? You can still see. There's still light in the darkness, even if it's a faint. The moon still shines at night and gives us some light, reflects some light back to us. And even when the moon is not shining bright, there's still some residue of light there. So put on your eyes in the darkness, allow yourself to go through it, and know that you're going to be okay. Right? Awesome. Love you guys. I will be seeing you all tomorrow. Have the most fantastic Taco Tuesday. I guess today's Tuesday. So have some tacos today. Okay. All right. Love you guys. Bye bye.